Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Brian the Duke David. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? It is episode number 33 of the Schmoedown Rundown, the official after show for the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, where we don't need to talk about our ratings because ours are actually consistent. Frank Janisch is not here this week, so we actually have a really great fill-in for him. We'll get to that in just a second. But also here, Brian Davids. What's going on, man?
Aaron, for 5 months, I said that Handsome Harloff would make his live show return in November in time to promote Spectacular, as well as a little Last Jedi talk. I said this as often as possible, so he'd prove me wrong, and sure enough, my master plan worked.
I feel like that's the wrong show. But also here, a competitor in the Schmoedown, just coming off of a big win over Nick Scarpino. It's a big team match coming up at Collider Collision with her partner, Ken Knapsack. She's one half of the Nerds Watch. She is Rachel the Crusher Cushing. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Hello, Rundown fans. I'm excited to be here and talk some matches.
We are definitely excited to have you. Let's jump into the news. Let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about this past week's episode of Inside Schmoedown with your partner, Rachel, Mr. Ken Knapsack, the pit boss, if you will. He had a special guest on this week, and it was one Tom Dagnino, really all I can say. And Tom had some things to say. He talked a lot about Brienne. He talked about actually Christian himself. He even had some words for yourself, Rachel, and Matt Nost, and among other people. So I do want to start with you on this one. What did you think of what Tom had to say?
Mostly Tom being Tom. I have to give credit where credit's due, and that's to my partner, Ken Knapsack, because wrangling Tom seems to be an impossible job, and I think he did a fairly good one. But yeah, Tom's just not impressed by anyone unless he wants something from them, which would be why I think he said something nice about Jeremy Johns. And the rest of us, according to him, are losers. So yeah, Tom being Tom's about all that was.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. It's Tom being Tom. Brian, what did you think of what he had to say?
Man, the Crusher is bringing it already. This is going to be a great episode of the Rundown. I'm really enjoying Inside Schmoedown. I like how Ken is doing something different, something unique, without riding the coattails of successful shows that came before him. Tom was a great guest. Even if you don't like Tom, he is magnetic. He's entertaining. He had his Ted Kaczynski vibe going once again. And the guy just loves his sneakers, always finds a way to show those off. And my favorite part is when he takes shots at the pizza guy or the pizza boy, whatever he calls Matt Nost. There's something about that I just get a big kick out of. So great show, great appearance.
So yeah, another great edition of Inside Schmoedown. I think it's been a great addition to the Schmoedown family, and it's always good to hear from Ken. Ken, a great friend of the show, and we respect him a lot. So definitely check it out every Thursday live on Collider's Facebook page. But let's jump in to the recap this week. We didn't have a team match. It was a fatal five-way InnerGeekDom match between Erika Ishii, Coy Jandreau, Mike Kalinowski, Charley Feldman, and Emma Fyffe. First things first, before the match even got started, we had a combining of forces, so to speak, when Team DC Movie News finally showed up together. We had Roxy Stryer, Johnny Loclasto, and Adam Gertler all come to support their good friend Mike Kalinowski in battle. Brian, what did you think about finally seeing Team DC Movie News in the house?
Yeah, DC Movie News united in the pre-show sketch. I didn't say skit. And they've been doing more of these lately. I like that they're doing more of these. I think they are something that the WWE side of this game could really really stand to expand on. And I hope they do continue. They'll get better and better. There's a nice little detail in this because they usually film these in the writer's room. Zoom in on the whiteboard in that writer's room, and you can see a bunch of ideas that are written on the board. But I'm pretty sure that Ken, Josh, and Riley are trolling us, as there are a bunch of strange ideas that I would bet anything are just written for this very purpose of Schmoedown fans zooming in and seeing what they're writing up there. So fun stuff if you look between the lines.
Rachel, what did you think of seeing Team DC movie news?
This is one of the teams that I feel like fans and even people within the league have been calling for a long time. So it was great to see all of them. I love Roxy. I love how she's going to pretty much manage these guys. And I really like these kind of sketch type things that they're adding. It's just another element to the whole Schmoedown show. And I'm really digging that.
Well, I think a big advantage that Team DC Movie News has, not only is Roxy going to be their manager, but their mouthpiece is going to be Johnny LaQuasto. Johnny LaQuasto is a commentator for Championship Wrestling of Hollywood, so Johnny's already got the wrestling knowledge. He's also a commentator for the Monday Night Raw after show as well. So Johnny is no stranger to kayfabe and how all this works. So I think that's a distinct advantage for Team DC Movie News, that they have somebody that knows their way around the stick, if you will.
As I've said before, there will be Schmoedown trivia someday, and one day someone will be asked who was the first Schmoedown mouthpiece officially. And now we know. Otherwise, there was an interesting detail as Coy Jandreau, one of the hosts of Marvel Movie News, he was wearing a Batman comic book shirt while the guy from DC Movie News was dressed as Batman. So Coy was really playing some psychological games here. He was going opposites, and I think this was a strategy that was on purpose to get in the head of Kalinowski. So, I mean, we'll talk about the result later, but interesting detail that I think Coy planned on purpose.
Well, I think we can all agree that Charley Feldman had the best shirt. I think we can all agree with that. As it was just a plain white shirt that I'm pretty sure in black marker said Loot Crate shirt. But let's talk about the actual match that happened. Let's get into it. We had Charley going out in the first round. She was the first one eliminated. And then we had Erika. It came down to the final three, which was Coy, Emma, and, of course, Mike Kalinowski. And then it came down to the final two, Coy and Mike, and it was back and forth. We got down to the question, controversial question of Puddin', which ended up being the answer. And it was Coy who won this InnerGeekDom Fatal 5-way. I'm not sure where that puts him in the rankings, as we don't really have InnerGeekDom ratings at the moment. I know that's something that they're probably working on. But Rachel, let me get your thoughts here. You have all of these new competitors. What did you think of their performances?
Just from a macro level, I loved this match so much for the personalities. I love bringing new people in. InnerGeekDom League is still young. These 5-ways really give a boost to the numbers, get new people in from some familiar places like Screen Junkies, but all 5 of them had personality and were just having so much fun up there. And I think that really added to the atmosphere of the match. And then on top of it, the match was really good. I mean, even though she went out first, Charley answered a lot of questions, and so did Erika in round 2. It wasn't a sort of blowout style like poor Hal Rudnick in my match. So I think they all really did come to play, and that was fantastic to see, and just fantastic to see the league grow in this way.
Erika definitely stuck out to me. It just seemed like she was a constant ball of energy, and I fed off of that. I thought she was great. Brian, what did you think of these new folks?
Overall, great match because of the personalities. You know, I said last week that Killer Kalinowski would be someone to watch, as he could be an elite player. We just don't have enough tape on him. And he absolutely showed that he is a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, he didn't win, but just like the previous 2 Fatal 5-way InnerGeekDom matches, the top performer, like our present company, the Crusher, despite not winning, they were the top performers. Hector was the top performer at Spectacular, even though Robert won. Same for Rachel, of course, as I just mentioned, in the match where Jeremy Johns won. And now Killer was the top performer in this match in which Coy won. Now, as far as Charley, I wanted to see more of Charley. And this goes to an overall issue that I have with these fatal matches, is that you want to get to know new competitors, and yet they can be eliminated within 5 minutes. So I just don't like how someone can be gone after one round. I like matches that build after each round, that add up after each round. I wish they would score these like tennis matches do, where you get a point per set, per round, if you will. And that way you can keep people around more. Minor issues, though. Great entertainment. I've got some other specific issues, but Aaron, what was your overall impression of the match?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a lot of high energy stuff. It was different to see a match where it seemed like everybody got along and everybody was genuinely rooting for each other. It was kind of a nice change of pace. As much as I like the kayfabe and the storylines, it was kind of nice to see everybody patting each other on the back. And even in the post-match interviews, everybody had each other's back. I thought that was cool. I thought Emma had a standout game. I thought everybody kind of got their moment. And Kalinowski was, of course, the big standout because he had so many correct in all the rounds. And he was dressed as Batman, so he's immediately catching your eye. And Bill, Brian, I will say about the scoring system, and something that I kind of find weird is when you've scored so many points in a round, it's like at one point Kalinowski just didn't have to answer. It was just like, okay, well, you can just sit there. It's kind of boring. I don't really like that very much. But that's just something I found that kind of stuck out.
But there were a couple issues that I wanted to focus in on. And Aaron, you brought up a fantastic point in regards to sportsmanship. Someone on Facebook took screenshots of every post interview, and you could see how much these people were enjoying themselves and enjoying each other. This was a friendly bout. It's kind of the antithesis of Roca in post matches where he's not shaking hands and he's going off on his opponent. This was everything but that. People were hugging and kissing, and it was good to see authentic sportsmanship where they meant it. Going to round 2, the Deadpool taxi driver question. This was tricky because Coy gave an incorrect answer of Rajit. The problem is, I think they were thinking of Geeta, the taxi driver's girlfriend or wife's name, and confusing it as a nickname for the taxi driver Dopinder. I checked the Deadpool script. There were 42 mentions in the script of Dopinder, nothing for Rajit. So Coy got an answer that he technically should not have gotten. So this goes back to our sweaty, clammy hands controversy, where if they're going to be exact, if they're going to be to the letter, it needs to be consistent moving forward. So Coy got leeway on this. I'm not going to say it affected the outcome. I mean, yes, he won, but the way Fatal 5-Ways work is it didn't, round 2 did not come back to haunt Killer Kalinowski later. It didn't cost Killer a win. Coy just won the round that he was supposed to win. But like I said, I need things to be consistent, especially since that precedent may have been established with these sweaty, clammy hands bit. So other people pointed this out too. Rajit was never mentioned as a nickname. It was definitely Dopinder. Going to round 3, Emma jumped the wand when it came to her third question in regards to a certain wand maker. And Tricky Skaliski continues to honor his nickname as he's either vague or intentionally misleading. So who knows what this match would have been had Emma not jumped the gun or jumped the wand, as I put it. So such a great match when you're able to focus in on these things. And by the way, I got confirmation of something. Players can challenge an opponent's answer. So theoretically, Killer could have challenged Coy's answer of Rajit, and it could have been overturned via that challenge. So people think that you can only challenge one of your own answers. That's not the case. You can actually issue that challenge in regards to an opponent's answer. That was confirmed by Christian.
Rachel, somebody that is a competitor in the Schmoedown, how hard is it to process all of these things like challenges and, making sure you're writing down the correct answer, making sure you get your spelling right and you pronounce it right? How hard is it to keep all these things at once in your brain while trying to remember a trivia answer?
I don't focus on any of that stuff. I mean, I know I should, and as I go along, I'll try to remember the challenges more, but I barely hear what Mark and Christian say. In fact, when I watch my matches back, I have no idea what their banter is in between asking each of the questions. Like I've tuned it out. I'm just trying to remember the question and find the answer in my brain and write it down. So juggling that in the 15 seconds that you have, plus trying to remember, that you can challenge, and now that, you can challenge somebody else for possibly having answered it wrong, but given the point anyway, that it's a lot to juggle. And people who have been on camera more than I have might be a little better at compartmentalizing, but I'm still new to this. So yeah, I kind of block everything out as soon as I've heard the question.
You make a great point there, and I do want to circle back to that when we talk about your match here in a second. But I do want to talk about one question that seemed also to get people in an uproar, but for a different reason. So let's take a second, and Rachel, I'm sure you want to talk about this. Rachel, let's talk about Build the Pony for a second.
Happily.
What were your thoughts when you heard this? Were you in the audience for this question, and what were your thoughts when you heard it?
I wasn't actually for this match, so I was really excited to watch when it dropped. I had a great giggle myself, but mostly based on Mark's reaction more than anything else. I think Mark Ellis in this match was pretty hysterical just because he isn't quite as big as a geek as the rest of us that have competed in these matches. And so the detail level in these questions, he gets such a kick out of not knowing and then having us as the contestants know them. So I think it was his reaction that got the biggest laugh from me, but I have to say I, of course, adore the question as well.
I also enjoyed Coy's answer of a young sea biscuit. I thought that was kind of funny. Brian, did you like the Bill the Pony question? Did you also get a laugh out of it?
I don't know who or what Bill the Pony is. Even after watching this match, I have no idea what it actually is. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, this is why InnerGeekDom would kill me, because when it comes to animation or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, that's my weakest stuff. I'm just not into it. And that's why Rachel is such a triple threat in this competition, as she's got the extra sweaty categories on lockdown, seemingly. So there's no triple crown yet officially in this league. But Rachel, I'm not just saying this because you're a guest, but I think you have the best chance given your intricate knowledge of Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, etc. Let's talk about the whiteboards. In rounds 3 and 4, they use whiteboards instead of buzzers, and I found this to be a better solution when it came to steals. In previous InnerGeekDoms, they used buzzers for round 3 steals. In this case, it was a bit more organized, a little less chaos, and in round 4, it wasn't who buzzed in first to answer. Everyone had a chance to answer, and I think it just worked better in that sense. Aaron, did you have an opinion on using? I know you don't like whiteboards, generally speaking, but in terms of the gameplay, do you prefer whiteboards in fatal matches as opposed to buzzers?
Yeah, I'm generally not a whiteboard advocate, but I think that this process being streamlined makes it a lot easier as a viewer, and it makes a lot more sense. So I'm all about it.
This is probably going to surprise people, but I kind of felt myself missing the buzzers. I agree that I liked the round 3 use of whiteboards, giving the opportunity for both competitors to make the steal. I liked that. And I still don't think that buzzers should be the final round of these matches, but there is something exciting about them, I find, watching matches and even having participated in using them. So I felt like there was a lot of whiteboard in this match, but it did play, I guess, a little bit more fairly, if you would say that.
It's interesting that you say that. Obviously, in your InnerGeekDom match, in your debut, Jeremy Johns took the win because he buzzed in quicker. So in the final round, you like the whiteboards, but in terms of round 3 with the wheel, would you prefer the buzzers in steal opportunities there or whiteboards for steal opportunities in the wheel round 3?
I think what I'm actually suggesting is that there should be another round and it should be a buzzer round. I think I like the whiteboards better than the buzzers in the round 3 because it both of the 3 contestants, both of the other people can possibly steal the same question. And I like that. But I found actually the final round to feel slightly anticlimactic in the way that it played out with the whiteboards.
Rachel, this sounds like some things that I've said about Fatal 5-Ways. I still wish they would consider the tennis format where you get a set point or a round point for every round that you win. After 4 rounds, whomever has the most set points wins. If you're tied, you go to a round 5 tiebreaker, or you just make fatal 5-ways 5 rounds, and it's best of 5, or whomever has won the most sets or rounds to that point. So I like your idea, though, of a 5th round that is all buzzers potentially. So plus that may give us more time with people like Charley or Erika, whom I didn't think had enough time after all this buildup. We had very little time with them. So whatever gets us more time with newer players and allows for not necessarily proper outcomes, but for top performers to win more, I'm in favor of.
Well, the good thing is it looks like, based on the post-match interview, we'll probably see Charley and Erika teaming up soon.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, so we
I
may get
think they're a great addition.
I agree. I like their energy a lot.
Yeah.
Such great energy. I don't know. There's something brewing right now in regards to the ladies side of this league. It's all the same league, of course, but there's a lot of momentum. The tide is turning. You can feel it. With Stacy last week, the Crusher this week, the presence in InnerGeekDom, new people like Erika and Charley. Things are changing. This league is evolving, and I'm really happy to see it unfold.
Don't forget, arguably the biggest heel in the business right now, Miss Movies.
Rachel, can you feel a turning of the tide as far as the ladies side of things?
Absolutely. And it was, the main reason why I said yes to doing it in the first place. I just, loved the Schmoedown so much, except, the majority of the competitors were men. And I knew that women could go toe to toe. They just had to find the right women who wanted to do it, had the knowledge to do it, and was in this sphere. And it took some digging, but it does sort of feel like, they found a couple, and then that opened the floodgates, and especially in the InnerGeekDom. And I hope that continues. I would love for this to continue to grow, and for the ladies to take just as many spots as the guys.
Rachel, let me ask you real quick. As far as your origin in the Schmoedown, did Ken convince you to play? Did he see your talent first and say, hey, let's do this, let's team up? Or had you already or proclaimed an interest in playing, and Ken then took it to Christian? And how did that evolve initially?
It was actually Clark Wolf who started the ball rolling. So I've known Christian for years. We worked together on a little show called The Bachelor back in the day, before he was doing this whole YouTube thing full time. And so we've just been friends, and I would follow him. And when they started shooting matches at Collider, when I wasn't working, I would come and watch them. And I was watching a match sitting next to Clark and mouthing the answers to questions under my breath. And she heard me. After the match was over, I introduced myself to her just because she's, a huge hero of mine within the league. And she looked at me and said, well, you should be playing. I heard you answering them. And I'm like, well, I'm not a YouTube personality or anything like that. I'm just a writer and a friend of Christian's. And through Christian had met Ken and Riley and whatnot, and started writing for Schmoes Know. But she marched right up to Christian after the match, pointed at me, looked at him and said, she needs to play. And he looked at me at that point and he's like, I never asked you because you're not an on-camera person, but would you want to? Because we would love to have you. We definitely want more women. You're in the family on the behind-the-scenes side of things. And it took me a little while to come around to it, because it did sort of scare me. But for a lot of the reasons we were just talking about, of having more women in the league and me pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, I just sort of threw caution to the wind. And Christian thought it would be easiest for me to start as part of a team rather than throw me right into singles. And after some debate and talking with different people, we decided Ken was the best match, because he was somebody that knew me already, and he had been at that match that, I was sitting next to Clark, he was sitting nearby, so he had seen me answering the questions, and it turned out to be the perfect matchup, in my opinion.
Clark Wolf gets the credit for discovering the Crusher. I mean, this whole time we assumed it was Ken, because Ken has hired so much great talent over the years, but we got to give Clark credit moving forward for identifying this, right, Aaron?
I'm going to make a correlation here, and it may sound way off base, but I'm reminded, the way that you were talking there, Rachel, reminded me of as I am an MMA fan, and a few years ago, a person named Ronda Rousey came on the scene. Well, Ronda Rousey set the world on fire and completely changed an entire sport overnight. And that's kind of what it sounds like. I mean, as different as these two worlds are, that's what it sounds like. It just takes one person and everyone to follow that lead, and now they've taken over the world. I think that's fantastic.
Guys, we got to talk about the pudding question. We've kind of glossed over it so far. Now, the category was DCEU, so there's a whole argument, yeah, the category should inform you as to what the context is, what the movie could be. Suicide Squad was not mentioned in the question, but the category of DCEU was mentioned. I think Killer interpreted the question as what could be another general nickname for the Joker. Because Clown Prince of Crime, yeah, that's a valid nickname, but has Harley ever referred to Joker or Mr. J as the Clown Prince of Crime in a comic or any other medium? It just doesn't sound like something she would say, whether it's in Suicide Squad or not. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's not something that she said in Suicide Squad, but she has said it before.
So she said, hey, Clown Prince of Crime, come over here. Let's go rob this bank.
No, not in that sense, but just like, oh, he's the Clown Prince of Crime. I can't do a Harley voice. My voice doesn't go that high, but she said it in the Arkham video games and stuff. I remember hearing her say that.
Yeah, she says it in reference to him, but you're right. Definitely not in Suicide Squad. And considering that that's the only DC or DCEU film that she's been in, it seemed obvious to me. I don't really know what all the uproar is about, to be honest.
I mean, come on. She had a choker in the movie that said puddin'.
Yeah, I think Killer rushed it. I think it was almost a layup kind of question, and he rushed it a little bit. He was out of challenges at this point, right? Or actually, no,
he had one left.
Yeah, Christian asked him if he wanted to challenge. And the thing is, he challenged the answer. He should have challenged the way the question was worded. He should have said, I didn't know you were talking about Suicide Squad. Yeah, the category was said, but the question did not specify. So maybe he could have gotten a break in that sense. Maybe they could have asked him another question. But I think the Deadpool question is the bigger controversy of the two. I just think Mike rushed it. He was excited. And puddin' is the clear answer regardless. So tough break. But either way, as the Crusher has proven, being runner-up in these contests is a big deal. Like, his career is going to be just fine despite not winning this actual event. Again, Crusher is a perfect example of what can happen with InnerGeekDom success. Same with Hector. Same with even the winners, Robert, Jeremy, and we'll see what Coy is up to. But Coy's a good player too. So I love that InnerGeekDom is now taking on its own vibe. There's not enough time or matches to give singles and teams at InnerGeekDom as much time as they deserve, but I love that these InnerGeekDom matches are typically entertaining. So even though these InnerGeekDom matches have a few kinks to work out, there's so much entertainment.
The one thing I took away from what happened with Mike is something that I've actually been surprised hasn't happened more often. For most of us who love these geek category movies, we also love the source materials, whether that's books or comic books. And occasionally, if not more than occasionally, things happen differently in the movies than they do in the books. So when I get Lord of the Rings questions, I have to be very careful not to mix up what happened in the movie versus what happened in the book, because the question in the Schmoedown is always going to be about what happened in the movie. And I think the Crown Prince reference was to, he's a DC guy. He's read the comics. He's played the games. He's heard that, and that's what popped into his head rather than what specifically happened in one of the DC movies. So I actually kind of think that this kind of thing could happen more often, which is one of the reasons why, like sort of with Emma's thing, you have to listen to the whole question. You have to be patient. You have to really center yourself and give yourself that time to get the answer right.
I know people say, the category was said beforehand, but I still feel like the question should be worded carefully enough to where everything is in the question itself. So Mike clearly just thought of a general nickname from another medium, and it backfired. He probably rushed a little bit. But hopefully in the future, though, a little detail, a little specificity is never a bad thing.
Let's move on to the singles match here. It was Rachel the Crusher Cushing herself versus the producer/seducer, Nick Scarpino. Before we get going into the scoring, I just have to make a quick point about Mr. Scarpino. Anybody that comes out to Pony by Genuine is all right in my book. And then also, of course, Rachel, yourself, you come out as a little Sarah Connor action, which by the first key of that song, I knew it was Terminator 2. The first key of that song. But anyway, that's just me.
First off, I love that, Rachel, your signature move, the crush hand plant thing that you do, I love that it was performed above the fold this time. Last time it was kind of below the screen, so I like that you probably watched the tape and adjusted accordingly. So awesome effect right there. How do you keep a straight face when saying the phrase magic pelvis?
Barely. I'll say that much. I just knew that the promo is the hardest thing for me, because I'm not used to putting on a character, and I'm trying to do that, but also be me and give the energy and live up to the Crusher persona, which Christian gave me. So yeah, it wasn't easy to keep a straight face, but it was pretty easy to take jabs at Nick via his whole producer/seducer vibe, and that just sort of made sense to me to say in the moment, and I'm glad it made the cut.
I love the Sarah Connor costume. I'm calling you the Rachel Cushing Chronicles from now on because of this costume. And Booker T, he recorded his keys to victory from his bedroom. So this continues the where in the world will Booker T record his keys to victory segment for this week. Every week, it's always a guessing game. So we're going to keep that going and see if he keeps surprising us.
Brian, you do know where Booker T was recording that from?
His bedroom, right?
Live from Houston, Texas.
Well played, well played.
So Rachel, I just have to ask, how did it feel to have Booker T pick you to beat Nick Scarpino first before you even get going here?
Well, to be honest, I didn't even know who Booker T was until a handful of months ago. I'm afraid my wrestling knowledge is not quite up to yours, but I am fully aware after mainlining lots of episodes and talking to Christian, Ken, and coming at the Schmoedown from that side of things, that Booker T is a very big deal, and I know a lot of our Schmoedown fans love that segment, and it just, to be honest, felt great that somebody like that thought that I could pull this win out.
Well, as much as Christian likes to say, no one's really up to snuff on my wrestling knowledge, but that's just me. Let's jump into round one. It was yourself. You grabbed 5 points. Nick grabbed 4, so it was tight early on. Brian, any thoughts in round one?
I was very impressed that Rachel got the Jean-Marc Vallée question right. One of my favorite directors, did great work on Big Little Lies. And I love that you went with the French pronunciation. However, he does go with valet. He goes with valet. But I like that you actually paid attention to that. So I'm impressed, even though it was technically a mispronunciation. I'm crazy about that stuff, as some people realize, or many people realize. But man, the biggest takeaway, one of the biggest takeaways here, I mean, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but Rachel, you spun animated in round 2, and you took it. You kept it. This is a bold choice, considering that the animation category has been a thorn in this league's side since the very beginning. And ultimately, you stopped this trend where animation is where people kind of go to lose. You have stopped the trend, at least for the time being. So talk about the decision to take a bold choice with animation.
Well, I appreciate you thinking I did well with that. I am a little mad at myself for not doing better. I feel like animation is a strong category for me. I know people are still just getting to know me, and I know that obviously the InnerGeekDom categories are good, but in my team matches, I did well in Oscar movies and I did well in directors. And so people form an opinion of the kinds of things that I'm good at based off of that. And animation didn't really didn't really factor at those points. But I hadn't gotten an animated question wrong in any of my round ones in any of those matches. So when I landed on that, it was not even really a consideration. I knew I wanted that category. But then, blanked on a couple I wish I hadn't, and got very lucky on the final question. So I managed to do well enough, but I wish I had done better, to be honest.
I mean, we've seen so many people crash and burn in animated. I was surprised. I thought maybe that you would go for like an Oscar movies or maybe a director's category. But then again, if you're confident enough, why take the chance on getting something that would really burn you? Like, I don't know how you are on movie release dates or something like that, but if you feel safe enough, I say go for it.
Crusher, do you have a weakness? What is your biggest weakness at this point?
I wondered if I was going to get asked this, and then I debated whether or not I would actually answer it, because I don't know if I want to give this away. But
feel free to hold that back. If you
this is a safe place. We're all friends here. We're all friends here.
No one's going to hear this.
I will say that if anybody's paid attention to my round ones, then it should be fairly obvious that horror is not my bag. So yeah, I am happy that horror is paired with thriller. I'm better at thrillers. So if I should ever get that category, hopefully there are some thriller questions peppered in there. But yeah, unfortunately, I like some classic horror, and occasionally something will pop through, like an It Follows or The Witch, that I enjoy. But for the most part, that is a genre I avoid. Sorry, now, Perry, Mark, and
are you training in your off time to counter this weakness? Are you taking more interest in horror? Are you asking Clark to take you to those precious Blumhouse screenings? Are you trying to develop that side for the Schmoedown? Or are you just kind of avoiding it still?
No, I am quote unquote training. I've been watching movies in categories that I find are my weaknesses. The trouble with that is, at this point at my age, I know the genres I don't like. So I generally don't watch movies in those genres. So when I'm watching movies these last few months in preparation for the Schmoedown, I'm not necessarily enjoying watching those in the genres that I don't love, because I didn't love them to begin with. So I've sort of watched ones here and there, and then I've done a lot of rewatching movies that I've noticed that have come up that I had seen but didn't remember well enough. And I spent a lot of time on IMDb and various, movie trivia apps.
Do you find yourself watching with more focus, with more intent? Are you watching more carefully than you've ever watched movies before, because it could be a question next week? Or Definitely. I think I started my own personal movie reviewing blog a couple years ago once I started getting involved with writing more, and that was all thanks to everybody that I was meeting through Christian. I started watching movies slightly differently then, because I was watching them with what I was going to write afterwards in mind. And something similar happened once I started competing in the Schmoedown, because it's very easy to pick out the kinds of things that you could ask trivia questions about. And it's oftentimes names, oftentimes actors, directors, but it's a lot of specifics. Chris Skaliski likes to ask about locations, states. What state was this in? What city was that in? Specific gifts that people give each other in movies, specific objects, things like that. So yeah, absolutely. I watch, especially movies that I'm specifically watching to quote unquote train. I'm looking for the kinds of things I think that he would write questions about. Aaron, were you impressed with how she navigated, or how navigatorial she was, according to Ellis, a word that apparently he invented? Were you impressed by how she navigated multiple choice in round two? She was not getting the 2-pointers, obviously, but she didn't give up at that point. She still worked her way through multiple choice and got points on every question. Have we seen something like this in the past, in your mind?
Well, I talked about it a little bit last week. I mean, we were talking about playing what I like to call small ball. It's like, hey, if you're not 100% for certain, take the multiple choice. I mean, what do you have to lose? Obviously, if you take it down to 1, it's better than your opponent stealing 2 points from you if you're not 100% sure. So just it's all about that strategy. And I mean, Nick did the same thing. He used as many multiple choice as he could. He got, I believe, half of those, and then got two other 2-point answers. So it's just all part of that game. You don't want to give your opponent enough room to beat you on steals, especially if you're just not 100% for sure. Just play the small ball, and I appreciate that. That's good strategy.
Yeah, as I said last week, certain people will act defeated when they have to choose multiple choice, but Rachel did not act defeated. She didn't give up at that point. She went through the options. She ruled stuff out, process of elimination, and she came up with 4 points regardless. And I'm super impressed by that. Yeah, it's small ball. It's laying up, as we talked about last week, the golf version of that term. Somehow, Scarpino Noir did the same thing. I was impressed by him as well. But the thing is, Rachel did it with animation. And regardless of her performance, she broke the trend of people spinning away from animation. So, like I said, for the time being, someone has succeeded with animation. That is, it broke new ground, as some people like to say. So again, major takeaway, animation did not conquer someone. Of course, the Crusher was the first person to conquer it. Again, 4 points is not the point. She won with animation. That has yet to happen, to my knowledge. So Nick, new releases. He called out Brienne for her lack of support in the crowd, apparently, but Nick, with new releases, did very well. The Iran question in regards to La La Land, very impressed. Very impressed that he got that. He called the Barbara Gordon voice in Lego Batman his Achilles heel. I don't know how that's anyone's Achilles heel, but he guessed Rosario Dawson in a very Makuga-like fashion. And that was the end of a 6-point round for Scarpino Noir as he went into round 3 with the lead. Rachel, what were you thinking now that you were down going into round 3? Were you panicked at all, or were you still confident that you were going to take it?
Well, here's the thing. I did not go into that match confident I was going to take it. I definitely had, it was the first time I'd ever been at the table just one-on-one. I'd always had Ken there, and that is a huge support system. And in the InnerGeekDom, I was in my comfort zone. So that I felt more capable with that. Right before I did this singles match, I literally looked at Ken and I was like, I can't believe I let myself get talked into doing this. But it just had to do with my lack of experience and the nerves and the pressure of a lot of people saying that I was guaranteed to be a contender, and that's pressure, and that's something I was struggling to deal with. And to top it all off, Nick is a competitor. His match against Mark Bernard was incredibly impressive. He is no slouch. He proved that in our match. And I knew that going in, that this wasn't going to be easy. So there was a lot going through my mind. Christian told me before just to take it one question at a time. And I remember actually replaying him saying that in my head after round 2 ended, and Nick did so great on his wheels. So I knew that there was 3 questions in round 3 and that luck would be a big part of it in the categories. And I just, would have to take them one at a time, which is what I did.
You mentioned pressure. We've seen people like the Beasts, as well as the Godfather. We've seen them kind of suffer that sophomore slump. So was this something, it sounds like this was something that you were actively thinking about. I mean, is this pressure that the fans kind of create? Fans create these expectations as far as who the next great players are going to be. And usually they're basing it on their debut matches. Jeff Snyder, he's been able to succeed lately because he got off to a slow start and people have kind of taken him for granted and he's made them pay for it. But you had all the expectations and pressure put on you from the start, given your impressive debut. So just to reinforce how much that changes things. I mean, can you sense it? Can you feel it? I mean, how do you play with that noise in your head, or do you just block it out as much as you can?
I mean, that's the bottom line. And some competitors are better at it than others. And you also have to accept the fact that this is the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, which means luck plays a role and you have to roll with it and you can't get upset with yourself. And I'm, very good at getting upset with myself, but I just couldn't let that happen in that moment. We all have to deal with that noise, as you say, and everybody does it differently. I want to think that I'm doing better each match I do and each match I play. I'm not sure yet if I'm succeeding with that goal, but I also think the other thing to do is to remind yourself that this is for fun and this is a show, and win or lose, for me personally, it's a win because I am doing something I never thought I would do. I'm not a pundit. I'm not a YouTube personality. I'm not an on-camera personality. So for me to even be out there is kind of a win for me. And the fact that I'm doing well with it and I'm meeting all these incredible people with it and that I have fans, which is a new concept for me, it's all an extraordinary experience. But when you're sitting at the table answering the questions, you just have to take it one question at a time. It's the only way you can do it.
Rachel, you got your 2-pointer with Danny Elfman. You took the lead back from Nick to go up 11-10. By the way, Tricky Skaliski loves Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman keeps popping up. So competitors who are listening, study up on Danny Elfman. In regards to Scarpino Noir's 2-pointer, Sleepless in Seattle, what holiday did Sam and Annie meet? Scarpino guessed Labor Day. Were you surprised that he would have such a lousy guess when this is a romantic comedy and most people would guess Valentine's Day? Were you surprised about his guess?
Well, for someone that's a producer/seducer, I would think that he would know these things. I know that doesn't part of that film take place at Christmas as well? So, I mean, that could have been, I could have seen where he would have got confused if that was his answer. But yeah, that one that was weird.
Yeah, but there's some reasoning to Christmas as well. But Labor Day, I mean, the producer/seducer seduces on all holidays, including Labor Day, I imagine. But for a romantic comedy, knowing your genre, I was shocked because that ultimately cost him the match. That 2-pointer would have changed everything. Well, Nick, on his 3-pointer, what actress co-starred along with Arnold in Total Recall? Of course, that was Sharon Stone.
Well, here's the thing. There's 2 answers.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it Sharon Stone, it's a lady I can't think of, but there are 2 female co-leads in that film. When Nick even questioned it, he's like, there's 2. And he said Sharon Stone for one, and Christian's like, well, that's the right answer. So I don't understand these questions in week 2. It's like, what are with these questions that have multiple answers? Like, it should be one question, one answer. Unless it's like name 5 Guardians of the Galaxy. I could see that. But one question, one answer. I don't understand this whole... I don't get that.
Because Christian said there were 2 answers or acknowledged that there were 2 answers, I'm sure that they would have given Nick the point to whichever one he named. Sharon Stone obviously is the more obvious one. Neither of us can even think of the other actress's name. Sorry to whomever it is. But because Christian acknowledged it, I'm sure he would have given the point. But yeah, I mean, when you ask a question like this, when it's a final round question, especially, there shouldn't be a potential 2 answers in a situation like this.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, I kind of want to get your take on it. Like, did you think that was weird as well? Or am I just kind of on an island here?
No, I think that wording, I think we mentioned this earlier, wording on the questions is so important. And depending on the wording, it could mean different things. There's oftentimes clues within the wording for things. And the more specific the questions can be, the less chance of this kind of thing happening. However, I've known Chris Skaliski for a couple of years now, and he's doing this as a one-man show, and he's doing an amazing job. And I think what probably happens is, for movies maybe he's not as familiar with, he just knows the general thing that we all know about Total Recall, and that's the main 2 actors in it, and just threw a question together. But that's the kind of thing that requires maybe a little bit more research or going into a little more detail. But yeah, I think that there have been a handful of obvious occasions where the wording of the question has called the question into question.
Look, I give Tricky Skaliski a hard time. I think he gives me a hard time back, but he's doing a great job, all things considered. That is not an easy gig. That is something that you've got so much pressure on you. Yeah, the fans submit some stuff here and there, but you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I'm surprised that we don't have more controversies, but because he's doing such a great job, every once in a while, every other match, maybe there's a question that is called into question. But
well, one thing real quick, I don't want to make it sound like I'm burying Chris. It's not my intention.
No.
I think that was actually, Brian, we talked about this before, like how sometimes you can tell when a fan submitted question gets in there.
Right.
I think that one was a fan submitted question, just due to the non-specifics on it. And just real quick, Rachel Takaten was the other co-lead in Total Recall. Just want to throw that out there.
Was her name Melinda or something?
I believe it was Melina, but I will double check. It is Melina, yes.
By the way, the point that I wanted to make about Tricky Skaliski is that he's been saying a lot lately that he's going to subvert expectations. He doesn't want people like Emma to jump the wand, which is what she did in round 3 of InnerGeekDom. So he wants people to listen to the full question, because you never know how it's going to end. Sometimes you think you do, but he is actively trying to make sure no one jumps the gun. And as someone who hates when people jump the gun, I'm glad that he's doing it. 5-pointer for Nick. So moving to the Crusher, your 3-pointer, Sleeping Beauty, Once Upon a Dream. You got that easily, which again gave you a 14-13 lead. But this is further proof that animation has finally gotten its due after 15 months at Collider. Animation has finally been overcome by someone. So when I say animation, I'm not just talking about your round 2 spin. I'm talking about this question in the final round, which helped you go on to seal this. But moving to Nick's 5-pointer, the Twins and Ultron, like you said, Rachel, very easy question. Aaron Taylor Johnson, Elizabeth Olsen. Nick took the lead, 18-14. Rachel, your 5-pointer, Angelina Jolie, 2008 drama, Changeling. You knew this almost immediately, I assume, right?
Yeah, I was quite relieved as soon as they said 2008 and drama and missing a child. I knew exactly what it was. And I just want to backtrack and say really quickly that I'm jokingly saying that Scarpino's 5-point question was easy. Easy is relative in the Schmoedown. It's the conversation I have the most with fans and even with other competitors. What I find easy, somebody else does not find easy. That's how this goes. That's part of the fun. That's what makes all of this so dramatic some of the time. But I will say that sitting in the seat and hearing that he got comic book movies and he got that question for his 5-pointer, I was mad that I had not picked that number, especially when I was given Angelina Jolie, that I did not have as much faith in when I was given the category. But as you said, as soon as I started reading the question, I very thankfully knew right away what it was.
You definitely had the tougher draw in round 3, and that didn't matter as you came out on top, 19-18. So as I said, the tide is turning within the Schmoedown. When you look at Stacy's performance last week and now you, Rachel, the Rachel Cushing Chronicles, I'm excited. I can't say it enough. And animation was finally conquered. A lot of things are changing. So terrific match to top off an overall great week of play. Last week had a couple clunkers aside from Stacy's match, but congratulations once again to you, Rachel. I'm saying that directly.
Well, it's like you said, we are so quick to anoint somebody to be the next. Like we were all for Bibiani, we were all for McWeeny, thinking all these guys are going to go undefeated, and now we've put this undue pressure on people, and I feel like Rachel's getting some of that, and like you said, and it was awesome to see someone come in and just do business. Like you said, Rachel, you just come in, you're laser focused, and you do business. But one thing I do want to point out, you were talking about don't focus on Christian and Mark's banter, but during your match, it looked like Nick was focusing in on that banter. Was that something you think caused him to not, maybe, even though obviously he played a great game, but the reason that you don't do that is because you think it'll throw you off your game, or what's kind of the idea behind that?
I think Nick can't help but be like that. And I think there's a lot of personalities in the Schmoedown where that's just natural for them. I mean, that's Mark and Christian. That's their camaraderie, and that does not come naturally to me. It comes, I'm that way with my close friends, but that's after, developing those kinds of friendships and me being in a comfortable place. Me sitting up at that desk answering movie trivia with cameras and lights in my face is not a comfortable place for me. So I am not even going to attempt to, do too much of that sort of personality banter back and forth type of stuff. It's just not the most natural thing for me. I hope to get better at it because I think that's part of the show. I do want to come in and answer the questions, but, I know and I'm aware that I'm putting on a show, or I'm part of helping put on a show as well. And I don't know if it distracted for Nick. I think that his background and his personality and the persona that he puts on, he's used to juggling those kinds of things. And I can't think of, I suppose the Valentine's Day question, if he'd, thought about it in a logical sense, or given himself a couple of extra seconds, and maybe he would have, instead of just throwing out an answer. But a lot of people do that because they don't know it. And, it's sort of a flippant type thing, but it didn't strike me that he was being affected negatively in any way by, participating in the showmanship side of things.
It seemed like he was saying some of these comments to you, though. I mean, did we drug test her? He said that to everybody, but there were a few other moments where he was kind of talking to you during your question or right before your question. I mean, were you at all distracted by anything he was saying to you directly? Did you get a sense of that?
No, like I said, I've kind of zoned or tune a lot of that stuff out. So, I definitely heard him say a couple things and I laughed at some of the things, and I appreciate his sort of laid back demeanor. I think that that's a lot of fun and great for the Schmoedown. But for me personally, like I said before, I was doing everything I could not to let any of that kind of stuff distract from me just trying to get to the answers.
See, certain players, when they hear certain remarks, they kind of get caught up in those remarks. John Roca is an example. So the horror category apparently is the only weakness for the Crusher, but it's not going to be a weakness for long because she is training. So look out, folks. The future is now, as the cliche goes. We got to give credit to someone that we forgot to give credit to in the InnerGeekDom recap. Jen Sturger was back this week, and I thought she gave some great post interviews in InnerGeekDom. Same with this case, same with this match. And I don't know about you guys, but I like having a little bit of variety. Emma's great, don't get me wrong, but Jen brings a whole different dynamic, and I like seeing a change of pace. I like seeing a different approach, just a different energy. So I'm so glad that they are mixing it up a bit. And Ken kind of pushed you into a JTE match. Ken has been quite clear for a while that he wants to take down the Patriots in any way possible, and that includes singles play. So did you want this match? I mean, you agreed to it, but did you want this match as much as Ken wanted it? Or are you licking your chops, in other words?
I'm looking forward to playing again in whomever. Like that was genuinely my response to that. But honestly, the thing right now is, after I got, my singles debut under the belt, Ken and I are laser focused. Like right now, I'm not thinking about who else I'm going to play in InnerGeekDom or my next singles match. It's all about Rotten Tomatoes at the Collision. Like that's what we're training for. That's what our focus is, because, we need to go through them to take on the winner of Top 10, the Patriots, which personally, I'm hoping it's the Patriots, because I'd like to, take this all the way. And that was the path that Ken and I set out on. And that's the path that we're, going to continue on. So if I end up playing JTE after that, bring it. I'm ready to take on whoever the next competitor is. And I can see why JTE could be a formidable opponent, but I also think he's got weaknesses, and I think I could capitalize on that.
How impressed are you by how focused the Crusher is? And were you glad to see Jen Sturger back, of course?
Well, I like the competitors that just do their thing, put their head down, do their thing. I'm a big fan of McWeeny and how he just kind of comes in off of musical cue, like not even close to how his music's playing. It just comes in and sits down. I enjoy that very much. I was happy to see Jen back. I think we've said many times that people tend to judge too quickly, and Jen needed more reps to kind of get familiar, and she's got those reps now. And you started to see her sports background come in. It felt like a sports sideline reporter, and she was a reporter for the Jets, and it started to come out. I started to see and hear the same kind of commentary that I would hear on like ESPN or something like that, and it gave it that more real feel. That's what we're looking for. And like you said, mixing it up with Jen, Perry, Makuga, Emma, whoever's back there, even Ken has done it before. It just adds a different dynamic.
Yeah, look, I'm not some Phase 6 fan. I'm a Phase 3 fan, an original Schmoes fan. So I love Christian and Mark. However, I still want to see Campea and Ken get their chances to call matches because I like having that variety. I like having different energy from time to time, as great as Christian and Mark are. So Emma's great, sure, but Jen definitely needs to be in the rotation, and it seems like the tide is turning in that case too. So everything about this week worked out beautifully. The play was great. The post interviews were great. The fantasy segments were great. Aaron Wilhelm continues to pay Christian back with visual effects after Christian let him play in the league last week.
Well, Rachel, you've talked about how you're new to this like groundswell of fandom and things like that. Friend of the show, Brian Ward, this guy is a great artist. He made an incredible match poster for yourself in Scarpino. What are your thoughts when you see something like that?
I've used this word before. I think I used it in my post-match interview. It's surreal. It's hard to describe what it's like from my point of view, being a behind-the-scenes person, being a natural introvert, being somebody who's just never really, sought out the spotlight before, and to do so in this way, and to do so in a way that's, encouraged people. Like some of the fans that have reached out, a lot of them are women, to be frank, and geeks who are, who've been very congratulatory and sweet to me about, looking up to me for being a woman who is proud of being a geek and knowing her stuff in those categories. It's just that whole side of it is so crazy, but also so rewarding. The flip side though is the pressure side, like people expecting, me to do the best every time and expecting to crush. And when I miss questions, some people aren't very nice about that, but that's the internet, that's the world. And that's the world that I'm getting used to slowly but surely, because I do want to keep participating. I'm addicted to this. I'm enjoying this. I love pushing myself outside of my comfort zone with this. So it comes with the territory, and that's just part of the whole learning curve for me.
Rachel, I'm not just saying this because you're a guest on the show. Aaron can attest that we've talked about this before, but seeing your confidence increase every time you play has been one of the most rewarding parts of covering the Schmoedown every week on the Schmoedown Rundown. You started off in your debut match. You could tell you were nervous.
You couldn't even hear me. I wasn't even speaking into the mic. It was, when I watched back, I was like, oh yeah, no, I got to change some things.
You were shaking a little bit and you had nerves, but every week your confidence and your comfort has increased. And now you are just in your element. You have taken this on and you're making it work in the best of ways. So that's one of my favorite parts of the Schmoedown, is just seeing people like you evolve from your debut match to where you are now. And I'm sure come Collision, you're going to have a bit of even more moxie than you have now. So I just wanted to put that out there. Aaron, I'm sure you agree as far as the Crusher's evolution, right?
I agree 100%. I actually have to give some credit to Chris Skaliski, because even before Rachel you had even come on the Schmoedown, or we actually even knew when you were scheduled to play, Chris had said, we did like our fantasy draft, and he drafted you, and he said, he's like, I know this person, she's going to be great. I'm telling you, you got to watch out for Rachel Cushing. And that put it on my radar. I was like, all right, well, Chris would know. I'm gonna watch. And then ever since then, it's just grown. I said it for weeks. I'll say it to you now that you're here. I mean, you're my favorite player to watch right now. Like it's just watching that go, to keep going and going and going. I enjoy it. I'm a big fan of the kayfabe, and I like all that kind of stuff too. But for someone to just come in that knows their stuff and just do business, I'm a big fan of that as well.
Thank you. I can't even say, thank you enough for all the nice things that you guys have said on your show, and, coupled with all of the other fans that have been so supportive. It's nice to hear that, like, what I bring to the Schmoedown is valued as much as, the Rokas and the little evils, and like those characters are great, but that's not me, so I have to just be me in this world, and the fact that people are relating to that, it means a lot.
We've been awfully positive so far. I got to point out a couple negatives, a couple criticisms that relate to both of these matches. I did not like Nick Scarpino's poking of Jen Sturger. I thought that was pretty inappropriate, even if he meant no harm by it. It rubbed me the wrong way for a number of reasons. Lastly, I'm seeing a trend, not just on the show itself, but, in the groups, in Facebook and whatnot. People keep trying to compare Brienne's heel turn, or Brienne as a heel, to Roka as a heel. And these things cannot be compared. Roka was designed to be a heel from day one. Brienne is doing something very different. Very different. She started out as a babyface. She's made the turn. She's a woman competitor. Everything is different for women on the internet as well as in the Schmoedown. And to compare her heel turn or her heel persona to Roka's, I think, is unfair. It popped up in the post interview in InnerGeekDom. It's popping up here and there. And I just want to squash this because these are two completely different things. Rachel, do you have anything to say about this kind of small trend?
I just think that there is room for all kinds of characters in the Schmoedown, and there's something for everyone, and no two of us should be the same. No two of our storylines or paths should be the same. And that there's just like room for everybody. I know that's like very kumbaya, but like that's the thing I love about it. There's so many personalities and so many different kinds of personalities, and I've loved getting to know them behind the scenes and then also as characters. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Schmoedown is as popular as it is.
Aaron, from your wrestling insight, there's a million different kinds of heels. So to compare them like they're all created equal just isn't the case, right?
What Brienne has done already and has continued to do is remarkable, really. How she went from, like you said, complete babyface, made the turn, and she's doing things that we've not seen any competitor do yet. And it's amazing. It's really something. And she's not being coached on how to do it. She just figured out, hey, I can do this differently, and I'm just going to go all in. And she has. We've had her on the show multiple times. She's great. She's great on the stick. And I think once she figured out, like, okay, well, I'm going to do this and see how it flies, and people grabbed onto it, it was like, all right, well, now I'm going to make it even better. And she has. And it's a completely different dynamic than what Roka has done, because like you said, Roka was tailor-made for the heeldom. John Roka is and I mean this in the nicest way, he's a loud, boisterous person that will yell and he's very rah like that. And Brienne's approach is a little more subtle, a little bit understated, but enough to just dig right at you. And I really appreciate the hell out of it.
Brienne is doing something that is brave. I mean, women are under the microscope more so than men online, especially in the Schmoedown. So a heel turn is going to get even more scrutiny. And to compare her heel turn to someone who's been designed from day one to be a heel for the last 15 months, the persona of the outlaw has been fine-tuned, and he's become the most popular player in the Schmoedown. So I just don't think it's fair for there to be this dialogue where certain competitors, not just fans, are saying things like, oh, Roka's the better heel, or Roka's the only heel. No, there are many different types of heels. There's room for several heels. Not everyone has to be a heel in the same way as John Roka. Point over.
Well, we're going to jump into this iTunes plug real quick, and we will be right back. Before we get to our team and singles previews for the week, I wanted to take a second and tell you guys how you can support the show. Please go to the Schmoes Know iTunes feed, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a comment. It helps out everybody on the channel, no matter if you're on your computer, your smartphone, perhaps a tablet.
I'm done with the tablets.
You will be helping us out tremendously in every show on the new SK Plus feed, including this show, the Schmoedown Rundown, the Wanger Show, Don't Be a Beardo, and Harloff Podcast. Please support all of those shows. Be sure to also follow the show on Twitter.
Not on Snapface and all that, Instant Chat or whatever it is.
And now back to the show. All right, guys, we're here with some team preview action. First up, Team DC Movie News making their debut. Mike Kalinowski and Adam Gertler versus Eric and Connor of Team Cinema Blend. Brian,
it's always tough predicting matches when there's virtually no experience on either side. However, DC Movie News has the killer Kalinowski, who's fresh off his unbelievable InnerGeekDom performance. I expect him to ride that momentum, and they're going to make. So I expect him to ride that InnerGeekDom momentum as DC Movie News is going to make smoothies out of Cinema Blend, even though Connor Svertberger has one of the best names I've ever heard.
Rachel, are we going to continue to see Mike kill the competition, or can we see a new team in Cinema? Well, they're both new, but can we see Cinema Blend pull off something special here?
It's really hard to say because, like you said, it's two new teams. Cinema Blend could be the next IGN, or they could be the next What the Flick. So that's a big question mark. And as you said, the only person in this matchup that we know anything about is Mike Kalinowski, who is, I think, trying to do the same thing I'm trying to do, which is be a presence in singles in InnerGeekDom and now also in teams. So you can't fault the drive on that guy. So it just makes sense to go with the known factor here, and I think he really wants this, and he's going to drive that team to a victory.
By the way, I meant Connor Schwerdfeger. I mispronounced it wrong initially. So, Aaron, who is your pick?
You mispronounced something? What the heck? First time for everything.
I know.
DC Movie News, I feel like, has to win because we need another faction. And I think these four, Mike and Adam and Johnny and Roxy, could be a fun stable if they're able to get a win here and keep it going. Now, we don't know much about Cinema Blend. We don't have any sample on them, and very limited on DC has been said. But I feel like DC Movie News not only will win, but they have to win.
Because we saw that sketch where DC Movie News united as a stable, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that alone is a sign of confidence in relation to their performance in this match. I'll leave it at that.
Well, let's jump into the singles preview this week. It is the Wild Man, Josh Macuga, versus the Godfather. Both of these gentlemen, unfortunately, coming off of losses. Macuga to Jeff Snyder, Drew McWeeny also to Jeff Snyder. So there you go. The Snyder getting it done. Rachel, between these two, where are you leaning? Who you got?
I have to go with McWeeny because I feel like he feels the sting of losing to Snyder, and that is just going to drive him to really like to take this back, to be the Godfather, to be the the anointed one that so many people thought he was going to be. I think this is the kick in the butt that he needed, unless of course Josh guesses his way to victory again, which is always entirely possible, and it comes down to the wheel just like in every match. And I love you, Josh, but I really think McQueenie wants this, and he's going to go after it big time.
All right. Brian, what do you think?
Drew McQueenie has to get back on track against Magic Hat and Macuga next week, and I think he will. Josh will make it interesting, as he always does, but Godfather fell victim to the dreaded sophomore slump. He's not going to lose back-to-back matches. He's too good. He's too well-rounded to lose back-to-back matches. And by the way, Scarpino Noir not only looks similar to Josh Macuga, but they play similarly as they're both always in these matches against tougher competitors, against more skilled competitors. So there's more than just what's on the surface when it comes to those two. If only Scarpino lived closer, those guys would make great tag team. Regardless, the Godfather rights the ship next week against Magic Hat.
Kind of wondering if Makuga's going to come out with an I Love Scarpino shirt. I think that would be fun.
That'd be amazing.
Nice little switch-up dynamic there. I'm a big fan of The Godfather. Like I've said, I think this is the 5th time I've said it during this podcast. I really enjoy the guy coming out and just doing his thing and not hitting a musical cue to save his life. I enjoy that. And Makuga always brings it. He's like Tom Cruise. He always shows up and he always gives 100%. And he's been in the most matches, but it's got to be The Godfather. I feel like he's going to get back on track. We're going to start seeing a climb towards that epic collision, pardon the pun, somewhere down the line with William Bibiani. Has to happen.
That might be my most anticipated match, is seeing those two finally square off. It just once they both debuted, that was the automatic go-to match that I think everyone envisioned. Christian admitted that is the match that he wanted to end up at when it came time for Collision. But obviously the game dictates where these things go. And for now, we have to wait. Maybe at Spectacular, we'll finally get that match. Who knows?
All right. And that's going to do it for the team previews. But before we go, we want to take a little bit more time with Rachel. So I believe we'll call this segment Ask Crusher Anything.
Rachel, you said that you're laser focused for the most part during your matches. However, if you had a choice, would you remove the studio audience if you could? Are they a distraction in a sense? Would you prefer to play to an empty room, or do you not care?
Actually, I wouldn't have guessed this before I played in my first match, but I love it. I think that there's an energy that they bring. I think that there is a vibe that I get from them. I mean, most of them have become friends of mine at this point, that, other competitors, people that work at Collider and whatnot. And I sort of feel the energy and vibe that they give off. And I feel it in a way that's encouraging, and they want me to do well. And I really surprisingly enjoy that. So I would keep an audience for sure.
This is kind of a silly question, but do you enjoy teams with Ken, or do you feel more comfortable in a match where it's the InnerGeekDom, where you're more in your element, you feel?
I feel more confident in answering questions in the InnerGeekDom. I mean, there's just a narrower set of categories, and they're all ones that I feel for the most part really comfortable in. There's always that fear in round one or the wheel round or whatever, and there's more up in the air. I don't know. I could get a category I'm not very comfortable in, or I could get a question that everybody thinks is easy and I miss, and that's pressure. But Ken being there offsets that pressure. So I guess if you're asking me to rank where I'm most comfortable sitting up there, it's probably InnerGeekDom first, team second, and then singles third.
You mentioned you work with Handsome Harloff on The Bachelor at one point. Could you see his talent of persuasion as well as his entrepreneurial spirit back then? I could see a drive. I think he just gives off that vibe to everybody, that he's always thinking several steps ahead and has plans and is intent on making them, come to fruition. But the thing that attracted me the most was just his passion for movies. I remember our first conversation. I was walking past his cubicle and I overheard him talking to somebody about the casting of Jennifer Lawrence for Hunger Games. And I had read the books and he had read the books, and he made a comment to somebody else. And I just stopped in my tracks and I backed up and I sort of, butted into the conversation. It was like, I wasn't very sure about that. I liked Winter's Bone, but I couldn't see her for sure in that role. And I really liked the first book. And it just, he was so open to continuing that conversation that it evolved into having a pretty much a daily conversation about whatever movie news was going on. And he told me about his Schmoes Know partner, Mark Ellis, and their reviews. And I started watching, and then the podcast, and slowly but surely I could see his
the plan that was in his head for, you know, pushing that brand and going into new phases and to really, you know, throwing himself wholeheartedly into it. So I think anybody who's ever met Christian Harloff can see that he's a driven person, but he's also a very passionate and open person. And that combination is just formidable.
Is there anybody in particular that you enjoy to watch in the Schmoedown, just as a fan?
Not named Roka Merle Riley.
Well, I enjoy watching all of them, obviously. I mean, Clark Wolf is certainly the one that stands out to me. I remember her first match and like me literally cheering from my couch that she did that well. I mean, it's hard not to say Bibiani. The guy just has so much energy. It's crazy, and it's even crazier in person. I have to say I really enjoy watching Jeff Snyder. I love his sort of under the radar path to victory that he's taken. He's such a good player, and I sort of like his tongue-in-cheek quality. It doesn't come across as, you know, really heavy-hearted evil. It comes across as more fun and tongue-in-cheek, and I enjoy that. And Brienne is just, you know, mesmerizing. What she's so theatrical, and it's something that I'm jealous of, that I'm not more like that. And I love how she's thrown herself into this wholeheartedly, and she's the driving force in her own story in the league, and that's fantastic. So, I mean, everybody brings something to the table, and I enjoy watching everybody, but I guess those are some of my favorites.
Frank Janisch, did you hear that Snyder comment that the Crusher made? It was quite great, wasn't it?
What is it like to have Ken as like a backbone?
One of the most self-deprecating people I've ever met, and I'm fairly self-deprecating. He outdoes me. I think he's at his best. He's a giver, I guess, is the best way to put it. Like he's so giving and so at his best when he's helping other people, you know, and it's just been a blessing. Like I met Ken at a birthday party for Christian at some point, and we'd bonded over Game of Thrones, and he'd actually had me on his Knapsack Files podcast when he was doing The Night is Dark as a guest. So we had, you know, a pretty big thing in common already, and I had felt comfortable with him. So it was the perfect choice for that. And then to top it off, we actually balance each other in the Schmoedown perfectly. He picks up some of the things that I'm not as good at, and vice versa. So we balance each other really well. But yeah, like I just think he's a really giving person, very comforting, very, you know, when I was having a mini panic attack before going on with Scarpino, he was the one who was like, you can do this. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
You talked about Ken Knapsack. He's your teammate. He's your manager. He's a mentor. You guys bonded over Game of Thrones and all these geeky things, of course. But who else have you bonded with within the Schmoedown that we don't see on camera? Who that would surprise you at some point that you have now become close with?
I think the obvious answer is John Roca. He's another, I guess, you know, quasi mentor figure. Like he's somebody that I can go to and be like, you know, like, how do you navigate these kinds of comments that you're getting? Or, you know, we've talked about, you know, our studying and how, you know, we get through those nervous moments right before a match starts and things like that. But, you know, him, like Christian, he's just an incredibly passionate guy who goes after the things that he wants, and I admire that. And he's just a really easy person to talk to. So, you know, we always chat when we're both at Collider, and we, you know, catch up on things and make plans to see movies and hang out. And just it's nice to meet, you know, a lot of my close friends that I've had for years like movies, but maybe not to the level that I do, or to that a lot of these new friends that I'm making do. So it's nice to have that in common with them. I've also gotten fairly close to Jeremy Johns. Ever since he beat me, we have a running joke when we meet up where he says he's going to take the belt at Collision and then I'm going to take it from him. So that's the whole plan there. And again, very easy to talk to, a lot of fun, and literally our Lord of the Rings conversations have started to get pretty epic. So yeah, I'd say those two for the most part, but everybody's, again, very friendly, a lot of fun, and I'm getting to know a lot of them.
Is there anybody on the periphery that we haven't seen yet that you would like to see in the Schmoedown? And I don't mean like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I mean just somebody around that you're like, oh, they would be really good in this.
Well, part of me was, I wouldn't say disappointed per se, but like Chris Hartwell is a sweetheart, and we were originally supposed to both debut in the singles league against each other, but as things happen, the scheduling and various factors, got in the way of that. But he wants it. Like, he'll sit in the audience and he'll answer questions, and he'll ask me, so how many in round one did you get? I got this many. And he does well. And I think that is another person that a lot of people could relate to when he finally gets into the ring.
Collision is coming up. Obviously, I enjoyed the Rachel Cushing Chronicles costume that debuted today during your singles debut. However, do you have a specific costume in mind for Collision that you would like to tease? Not reveal, just tease.
Probably not. Just put this out there now. Ken has made no secret that he's not really into the cosplay side of the Schmoedown, and as his team member, we want to be united in our coming out together, and so we sort of stick with the Game of Thrones, just general nerdiness kind of thing. Like, we might have a little something extra, but the cosplay as specific characters, I obviously I took my cue from Brienne and Clark and Riley, but it's surprising few competitors really go hard for the specific costume dress up as somebody from a specific movie, I should say. So we won't be doing anything that specific for Collision, but we'll have a little something up our sleeve. And I'm trying to decide for when I eventually get back into singles, whether I want to just continue with Sarah Connor. I mean, a lot of people debate what's the better choice when you're coming out. Stick with the same theme, like a Jaws theme for Dan Murrell every time, or change it up like Brienne does, or, most of the other people. So I haven't made up my mind just yet, but we'll see.
I respect team solidarity, but hopefully in the future, Ken doesn't affect your cosplaying potential, because you've brought it so far, whether it's singles, whether it's teams. So I understand Collision, but hopefully you don't shy away from it too much. Aaron, there's a question that you love to ask that you haven't asked yet. So it's something that you asked Clark. It's something that you've asked Mance in regards to recognition.
Yeah, but I got to make a quick comment about Ken. Even when Ken is not cosplaying, he's cosplaying.
Oh, he's always putting on a show. The man definitely does that. He's just not interested in the costume aspect of,
right.
Exactly. Of the cosplay, which is understandable.
All the badges, the backward hat, the guns, he's always cosplaying. But I always ask this question to every guest. I ask this question to everybody. Have you ever had like an interaction with somebody outside of the Schmoedown where they recognize you from the show and like, oh, hey, you're from the Schmoedown. I really like watching you. Has that happened to you?
Not outside of the Schmoedown. After my debut match with Ken against Tough Beats, I came into the Collider studio the next time, which I can't remember what it was for, but a number of people that I had seen at Collider before, but prior to my match, I was just a face in the crowd who knew a handful of people there. I didn't actually, interact with a lot of them, but a bunch of people came up to me after my debut match and introduced themselves and started to, get to know them, behind the scenes people and whatnot, and very congratulatory, very sweet, and even that, I know that doesn't sound like a big, out at a bar, somebody walks up to you, but it meant something to me. And I don't know if I'll get recognized outside of the Collider studios, maybe someday, we'll see. But yeah, that's the extent of my stories as far as that goes.
I think those people recognized your talent, and they want to be in your entourage. They want to be your hangers-on. So look out for those people. But I do think your first moment of recognition will follow Collision, because that's going to have a ton of views. That's going to be the biggest rated event so far. Now, let me ask you. The Schmoedown is constantly evolving. It's improved so much in the last 15 months because Handsome Harloff is so good about listening to the fans, listening to the players. What is something that you would like to see added as far as gameplay, or just something as simple as adding something to the wheel, or it can be anything really as far as the gameplay or the structure, just something in regards to what you would like to see added or adjusted, tweaked. It can be literally anything.
I believe it was Brand who mentioned this at some point. I think that if they continue, building up the studio and the abilities of things that they can do within the studio, having a screen with the questions on it I think it would make a big difference for a lot of players. Like I've said before, like you're, at least for me, I'm concentrating so hard on the question, and and the guys, when they read them, they do an amazing job, but sometimes intonation or mispronunciation or just misreading it can throw a competitor. So I could see why having it written down on a screen in front of us could sort of alleviate some of those kinds of mistakes. But I mean, that's pretty minor. As far as categories go, they've pretty much covered the ones that I really like. I like that they get into individual actors and directors, and one of my favorite directors doesn't have a pie slice yet. So if they could get a Ridley Scott category at some point, I would be quite happy with that. But yeah, they work so hard and to tweak things and to listen to people and to change. I mean, they changed the InnerGeekDom 5-way after, a lot of uproar after my match with the buzzers and everything. They tried something new this time. So they are definitely open to it. They're always trying to improve it. And that's a sign of, a company that really wants us to be the best it can possibly be.
The pudding question, had Mike been able to see the category as well as the question written out, it would cut down on a lot of the controversies that take place if the competitor is able to see the question. So that is a great suggestion. And I'm surprised that there is no Ridley Scott category yet. He's a perfect director for a pie slice. Absolutely.
Just my own ego. I'd prefer John Carpenter before Ridley Scott, but I'll just leave that there. Let's close with this. This is a question that I also ask a lot of people, but for the people out there that may not know, what do you want to say to them, for the people that have supported you and the people that may not know who you are and what you're about? What do you have to say to them? The floor is yours.
I'd like to think, and I hope, that I represent, I don't want to sound too cheesy, but like, I'm a very introverted person. It takes me a long time to get to know people, to make friends. I never seek out the spotlight or to be the center of attention, but sometimes you have to put yourself outside your comfort zone. It's the only way to grow, to try new things, to meet new people, that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm doing with the Schmoedown. And it's not easy for me. And I'm, just learning how to deal with the internet space and the kinds of comments that people have out there and getting thicker skin about it, but also appreciating the really positive ones. So it's a balancing act. It's a tightrope walk, and I'm learning as I go. And I hope that, I'm doing this for myself to prove to myself that I can. And I hope that is, if it's even remotely inspirational to other people in any way, shape, or form, female geeks, other introverts, other behind the scenes people who think maybe they want to, try out the spotlight, then I'm doing something good on top of having a lot of fun. So,
Rachel, you brought up something that is quite important, and Clark really paved the way for so many women to say, you know what, I'm going to try this, because it's an intimidating thing to go out there in front of 100,000 people and put yourself out there. I mean, Christian tried forever to build the lady side of things and to add more people to the league, but so many people were intimidated. But because of Clark, because of you, because of Brienne, Stacy, more people are now coming out. We're seeing that this week with Erika and Charley, Emma, of course. So you are setting an example that in 5 years, who knows what this league is going to look like? We may have titles held by all women at that point, and you'll be a big part of why that shift was able to happen. Now, I'm just curious, real quick, have you played a match with even the smallest amount of alcohol in you? Do you think a little bit of alcohol would improve your skills to take the edge off a little bit, or do you prefer to be sober going into a match?
It's an experiment I have yet to try, but I have been considering it. I've had a number of beers on the sideline watching matches, but I have yet to try it for my own. I think now that I have debuted in each of the leagues, I might be more open to possibly giving that a shot.
Thank you for entertaining our questions, though.
Rachel, I just appreciate your openness and your willingness to come on with us and talk to us for so long. I mean, it's just I think it's phenomenal. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it too. I thank you guys for having me on. And if I rambled too much, I apologize. But I'm really excited to be a part of this and happy to talk about it. And I'm glad you guys are part of the whole Schmoedown family as well.
Thank you, and thank you so much for putting yourself out there. And like I said, it's probably my favorite aspect to this season is seeing your evolution from that very first debut where your nerves were getting to you, and now you're this confident star player, and the year's barely half over. So there's a lot to come, and I can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
I await the day where you are sending out autographed 8x10s. But let's do the fun thing. Let's get our plugs in. So Rachel, where can you be found online? If people want to find you, where can you be found?
You can follow me on Twitter at Rachel J. Cushing. I also am a writer with schmoedown.com and on my own movie reviewing blog, getrealwithrachel.com. That's real with 2 E's.
Boom. And I'll sell it for you. You can also see her at Collider Collision kicking some ass against Rotten Tomatoes with her partner Kid Knapsack as well. Don't forget to check that out. Brian Davids, where can you be found, sir?
I almost forgot that Rachel is a co-worker of our own Frank Janisch. Forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to Frank's plug in a second.
You guys can find more of me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at filmschlubspodcast.com or wherever podcasts are found. I have a Wonder Woman review with Clark Wolf coming out very soon, as well as interviews with Better Call Saul's Michael Mando and The Leftovers co-creator Tom Perrotta. Special thanks to Clint LaJeunesse and Shane Bowman at HeisenbergChronicles.com, Clint at Floyd Pinkster for all their help with artwork, as well as Ray Ora.
Don't forget to follow Frank Janisch, the stat man of schmoesnow.com, at FrankieJ29. He will be back next week, I think. As far as I know, he'll be back next week. God, I hope so. Or somebody's getting fired. But you can also follow me on Twitter at ATTitanium. I also have a YouTube channel. It's called Aaron's World. Yeah, there's like 5 other ones, so hopefully you can find me there until I can find a better name. I didn't interview anyone for Better Call Saul or anything like that. But I do have my review of Wonder Woman up right now. And, of course, I will add my, unfortunately, my reviews of Baywatch and The Mummy will probably also come this weekend, so take a look at that as well.
Aaron, there is a movie that I saw was released recently. It's called Aaron's Blood. Have you checked it out?
No, I haven't.
It's a genre film, apparently. Obviously, from the sound of a title, Aaron's Blood, it has to be genre. But that might be something to check out.
Sounds like a good YouTube channel name. I might have to adopt that.
Ooh, Aaron's Blood.
There it is. Thank you for that. And of course, follow the show. It's most important at SD Rundown for all our updates with our guests. And of course, check out the Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook page for every Wednesday. For one of us, either Frank, Brian, or myself, we'll give you everything up to date at the time with guests and what's going on the show. So definitely check us out there.
Oh, by the way, we have an awesome guest next week. Aaron, you're going to announce that next Wednesday on Facebook Live, correct?
That's correct. It's going to be this Wednesday on Facebook Live at 7 o'clock. You will find out who next week's guest is. And I've got even better news than that. We're going to have a guest every single week up until Collider Collision. So we're on the road to Collider Collision. We're going to have guests every single week. It's jam-packed on the rundown from here on out. All right. Well, before we go completely, we like to consider ourselves the most fan integrated show on SK Plus. Certain responsibility to said fans. And Chris Clark, fan of the show, made a song this week in regards to one William the Beast Bibiani, another friend of the show, and it's called The Ballad of the Beast. So I wanted to recognize Chris for allowing me to be in said video, and here's a little piece of The Ballad of the Beast. We'll see you next week. We'll catch you next Saturday on SK Plus. Thanks, everybody.
A long, long time ago, Bibbs could still remember back when Roker used to have the belt. And he knew when he had his chance that he could win and make a stance and show John a little thing or two. But Harloff went and broke his chain. 2 perfect rounds were all in vain. Another loss was taken. The Beast left bruised and shaken. Whitney held his fallen friend, their potential team to ascend. Brothers till the bitter end. That's where the legend began. Growl, growl, the Beast on the prowl. He'll annihilate your record, so just sit back and scowl. Don't bother even trying, he'll just disembowel, singing, this'll be the day that I growl. This'll be the day that I growl. Let me take you back a few years to the early 90s and the Cold War fears. Walkman and pods for what was cool. There lived a kid named Bibbs who was only 10, a prodigy with a golden pen, reviewing films while he was still in grade school. At age 12, he won the Pulitzer Prize for his analysis of Lord of the Flies. The offers came rolling in, getting under Roger Ebert's skin. He grew into a cunning, all-knowing fuck, destroying all the competition, causing a muck. He got fruit teller Vince to sell him his truck so he could move down to L.A. Ooh, growl, growl, the Beast's on the prowl. He'll annihilate your record, so just sit back and scowl. Don't bother even trying, cause he'll just disembowel, singing, this'll be the day that I growl. This'll be the day I growl. Now for 10 years he was on his own, became a reboot writer for the Twilight Zone. It wasn't good job security. He grew out a great big goatee, met his best friend Whitney, who had a voice that came from you and me. When as the two of them were talking Trek, a shadow appeared through a nearby deck. They both began to pursue. My God, it's a Russian blue. They love that cat. Can you not tell? Whitney suggested the name Zero Misspell. Bibb said, OMG, that's dumb as hell. So they named him Sergio.